80s, there were some pretty amazing movies. The highest budget movie from the 80s was Indiana Jones with a budget of $48 million. But the most profitable movie from the 80s was E.T. That one had a budget of 8 million, but it made 800 million revenue, so that made it the most profitable. The most popular movies from the 80s were episode 5 and 6 of Star Wars. And then just some honorable mentions of popular movies that came out from the 80s. We have Back to the Future, we have Die Hard, The Breakfast Club, The Little Mermaid, The Goonies, Terminator, Dirty Dancing, and then my personal favorite from the movies is Field of Dreams. It has a really good premise, and it kind of left me like a thought-provoked. And then another one of my favorites from the 80s, and a lot of people's favorite, is Top Gun. They just nailed this movie.
Alright, on to politics and policies of the 80s. Starting with Ronald Reagan. He was the president of the time, and he went from 1981 to 1989, so basically all of the 80s. And his policy of the time was Reaganomics, which aimed to cut taxes and reduce government spending and delegate industries. Next, the US experienced a recreation in the early 80s, but later saw strong economic growth. Conservatism was a big policy or belief of the time, and was a moral majority, and Christian rights gained influence, pushing traditional values to differ. There was also the AIDS epidemic of the time, and caused fear and activism to go throughout. Reagan did not actually put too much time and effort into addressing the AIDS issue of the time, and that caused some controversy within the country. Women in the workforce increased, but gender inequality still remained until a bit later. Environmentalism grew, awareness and pollution in the ozone layer was found and studied a bit more. And then also lastly, nuclear weapons were increased a lot, and increased tensions between America and Russia, between America and the Soviet Union, but then the Soviet Union then.
In the world during the 80s, the Soviet Union finally ended. This ended with the collapse of the Berlin Wall. This happened because the Soviets began to reform their government with the rise of Mikhail Gorbachev, and he became the leader in 1985. He allowed more freedom in the countries that weren't the Soviet Union, and so places like Berlin got a little bit looser on their rules, and so the Sinatra Doctrine allowed Eastern Bloc countries to make their own decisions. And so with that, rebellions started happening in Eastern Europe, and the Berlin Wall was taken down so that Germany was no longer separated between Soviets and not Soviets.
Women's hairstyles in the 80s were very big. They would, can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, sorry. They would do crimped hairstyles. They'd use scrunchies to like have a big ponytail on top of their head. They'd do like the headbands with the flipped ends. And like if you can see in this one, they'd have like big like ruffles and folds in their hair. Just very like power move, like standing out hairstyles. So style varied throughout the 80s, but what became really popular was the bright, colorful athletic wear. Women would wear what you can see down in here, and they'd wear like sweatsuits and short shorts and very bright, colorful clothing. What was also seen was Vans and like this style of like wearing like the button-up shirt over like another shirt, and just very colorful clothing, very unique. And they liked to do what was called like power dressing, so very like bold and unique. The most popular hairstyle in the 80s was the mullet. So the shorter in the front and the crazy in the back. And during this time, they branched out into longer hair, more of the feathered look, and even dyeing their hair blonde. A lot of different things were trending in the 80s, but here are a few. So there's the Walkman, which then people could bring around what they were listening to. And then it was very popular was like the punk rock bands. And then MTV, and Rubik's Cubes, and Cabbage Patch Kids, and so many different things that people would see, and it would get very popular. Also during the 80s, cable television was booming. Almost everyone had it, and so this allowed for sports to be televised, and everyone could watch it on their TVs. This also caused commercialization of athletes. People began knowing who athletes were and began choosing their favorites more than they had before. And so that became one of the forms of leisure for Americans throughout the States. Okay, here we are to sports and leisure. There are very many iconic sports moments throughout the 80s. In the Olympics during the 80s, the US did very well, winning many gold medals. Michael Jordan during these years, had his great success with games, and he made a game-winning shot, which became known throughout his career as the shot. He also, during the 80s, Air Jordans began their start in becoming very popular, and they grew in knowing what they were, and everyone wanted to have them. Mike Tyson, at the age of 20, was the youngest world champ, and he went on to win many more titles. This was a funny story I found when I was researching. It was California versus, I want to say, USC, and the game was super close, and everyone thought it was over, and so the band started coming onto the field, and then I think it was California caught the ball and was running down to their end zone to get the touchdown, and they knocked over some of the band and ended up winning. And then, okay, I think that's it. Wait, no. In the 1980s championship, Magic Johnson had an amazing game helping his team win, and that's what helped him become well known.
3, 2, 1, go.
Who was your celebrity crush in the 80s?
My celebrity crush was Catherine Bach, also known as Daisy Duke, and now people that wear short jean shorts, they just call them Daisy Dukes. But anyway, you can't tell there if she had them on. But yeah, she was the one. And then we had a car show in Lewiston, Idaho, and the General Lee came, the car, and she was sitting next to it on a hay bale. And they were selling pictures of her, and if you bought one, she would sign it for you. So I was 9 years old, 10 maybe, and we bought a picture, and then my dad, he said, well, you got to go get it signed, and so we were in a line, and when it was my turn, I just froze. I couldn't go, and she turned to me and said, come here, hun, and I just melted. And so I got to sit on her lap, and she reached around me like this and signed it, Catherine Bach, XOXO, and I didn't even know what that meant. But oh my gosh, it was a big day. Big day. Got to meet my celebrity crush and sit on her lap like Santa Claus. Yeah.
Okay, so what was the must-have item of the 80s?
For me, it was a BMX bike.
Oh.
We raced BMX, and I had a Mongoose Pro Class race bike that I still own, and had to have it. Rode it everywhere, lived on it, because we couldn't drive yet. Yeah.
What were like the most popular hairstyles and fashion trends?
Hairstyles for guys was mullets. This is me in '89. I have a mullet, but you can't. Well, you can see a little bit of the back. Girls, it was big hair, curling irons, Aquanet, just hairspray galore. Styles really changed. The early 80s were kind of like the 70s, bell bottoms, pretty gross fashion. Late 80s, mid to late, changed quite a bit. Parachute pants, then it was 501s, then it was pegged 501s, which now they make skinny jeans, but those didn't exist back then. We wore Vans, gosh, a lot. And now it was cool to see them come back. You guys don't have them on, but hey, there you go.
Vince.
Yeah, we wore those. We raced in those. So the styles got better as the 80s went, but the 70s styles were really gross in the colors, so that lingered a little bit in the early 80s.
Okay,
All right?
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, here we have Mr. Wiles, the anatomy teacher at Mount View, and we are going to be interviewing him about the 80s, starting with music. What were your opinions on the genres of music at the time?
Well, I liked pop and rock. There was also punk was big in the 80s, and a lot of those bands that were punk kind of moved over into the rock world because that's where the money was. So, but I had music with me all the time. We had a boombox. We took it on road trips. We took it in the bus. We even carried it on our shoulder like they did in the movies. But you had to have your batteries. You had to have good batteries. Because if your batteries started dying, the music started slowing down. And we had Walkman, little portable tape players with headphones that we would wear skiing. And so yeah, it was just music. It was all around us all the time.
Now, what were your parents' opinions on this new music coming in?
They liked most of it. They loved Michael Jackson. He was big. Lionel Richie. There were a lot of bands that parents approved of, I think. So you would hear parents listening to a lot of 80s music, but not all of it. And there was some, I don't know, Boy George and alternative stuff that they weren't into. And then the heavy stuff with bad lyrics. They didn't like that either.
Yeah. Now, favorite song or artist of that time?
Okay, favorite artist was Journey. Favorite song, there was one in '83 called "Everybody Wants to Rule the World" by Tears for Fears, and I freaked over that song. And my girlfriend bought me the tape, and I still have the tape. And we still listen to the tapes in my man cave. We have a tape player, and we listen to tapes and records. But yeah, that was a great song.
Nice. Now, kind of different topic. What's your favorite movie of the time?
Favorite movie was in summer of 1985, and it was Top Gun. And I saw it down here at the Egyptian, and it was a matinee. It was a Saturday, middle of the day, middle of summer, and on the way out of the theater, the Navy had a table set up with recruiters, and there was a line going down the block.
Wow.
And all these guys that had just seen the movie, they wanted to be Tom Cruise and they wanted to be pilots, and so the Navy's recruitment that summer doubled because of that movie. Yeah, it was big. No questions, hands down, that was the best movie. The Outsiders was pretty great too. It's another one of my favorites, which also has Tom Cruise in it. Tom Cruise and I share the same birthday.
Wow.
And we're obviously identical. So,
Yes, of course. The
yeah.
resemblance.
All right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wiles.
You bet. It's been a pleasure.